What is something a high school teacher told you that you will never forget? Lesson 1. In my childhood, only one person ever tackled my mother about her abuse of me and my siblings. It was Parents' Day, and my mother, as usual, turned up to take the credit for my being top of the class again. At one point, there was just me, my bitch of a mother, and Mrs. Soames, physics teacher in the lab. Mrs. Soames quite calmly challenged her, saying, "Mrs. XXXX, why do you treat her the way you do? She's a good girl and doesn't deserve it." To my astonishment, my evil bitch of a mother was speechless. No one had ever confronted her before, and she just didn't know where to put herself. It was easy for the other teachers and pupils to make snide, patronizing remarks about this cow to me. A 13-year-old girl isn't in a position to do anything about it, and I'm guessing they were trying to ease their consciences about the fact that they were too cowardly to intervene. But Mrs. Soames has been a role model for me ever since, and an unforgettable example of those people brave enough to tackle a bully in the presence of their victim. To have someone stand by you when you are vulnerable and make their support for you clear, I can't tell you how that changed my view of other people. Lesson 2. I was a senior and my boyfriend at the time was a junior. I had a part-time job at a restaurant and had formed a little crush on one of my coworkers who was a bit older than me. I knew it was unrealistic, but I couldn't help the way I felt. I confided in my APUS teacher from the previous year who knew both me and my boyfriend. He said to me, "Everything that happens up there in your mind palace is harmless. You can think and feel however you want, and as long as you don't act on those feelings, you're not doing anything wrong." That really grounded me. My boyfriend and I had one of the happiest, fruitful, and stable relationships I've ever been a part of. Although we broke up when I left for college, we're still good friends. Shortly after this conversation, my work crush evolved into an amazing friendship, and he started dating one of our coworkers who became one of my best friends. They're slightly older than me, so I look up to them and joke that they're my parents. They're still the only 3 people I try to see every time I'm in my hometown. Lesson 3. I went to 13 years of Catholic school. My dad was agnostic, but my mom was from a large Catholic family, even though she wasn't particularly devout herself. I was an altar boy, went through the relevant sacraments, earned the Cub Scout and Boy Scout medals for Catholicism, and all that jazz, even though I didn't particularly have strong feelings one way or the other. It's just what everyone I knew did. In order to graduate, every student had to have an exit interview with the school priest to discuss their future as an adult to the church. I walked in for mine, and Father T just stared at me for a minute and then said, "Kid, let's be honest and not waste our time. We both know that you aren't really a believer and have no intention of continuing in the faith when you leave." I was shocked. I had never said a word to anyone that would indicate this. I just never really gave it much thought. I pointed out that I'd done all the things that had been expected of me. I was a good kid, didn't drink, didn't fornicate. Hell, I didn't even take the Lord's name in vain at that point. I asked him why on earth he would say that about me. He said he just had a hunch, and was he wrong? I thought about it, decided he was right, and never looked back. So I have a priest to thank for showing me that not only had I lost my faith, but that I may have never had any to begin with. Lesson 4. Our physics teacher used to give us tricky questions after explaining concepts to get us used to solving them. In one of the questions, I found his answer to be wrong and corrected him. He listened to me but couldn't find where he went wrong. Then it turned into a debate with each of us trying to convince the other. Every time I tried to convince him, I had the lingering doubt. What if I'm wrong? What if I made some careless, stupid mistake which gave me the wrong answer? The only reason I still had the courage to hold my own view was the teacher himself. He never dismissed my question, never treated me like an ignorant kid questioning his teacher who knew better. By the end, we had run out of time as the class had ended. Most of my classmates were either trying to convince me he was right by quoting his initial explanation verbatim or expecting me to be proven wrong. Even if I was right, I was expecting him to either ignore my question or to skip past it. But in the next class, he not only told the class I was right, he explained where he went wrong in his initial explanation and turned it into a teaching moment where he showed us that anyone could make mistakes, but wisdom lies in fixing them. He later told me that even if I were wrong, what I did was right, that I should never hesitate to question anything or anyone, as long as I do it in a respectful and courteous way. That lesson never left me, and I just hope that whenever I question something, disagree with someone, or I am proven wrong, I can do it with enough grace and humility to make him proud. Lesson 5. This one is really fucked up. Junior year, we had a math teacher we all made fun because she was a masculine lesbian. I never did myself, but I laughed at the jokes about her and never spoke up or called anyone out, so I consider myself guilty of it. This was 2003 and the height of South Park/Family Guy type humor for a teenager where everything was funny, if it was racist or sexual. Anyway, she was gone for like 3 weeks. We had a sub come in, and no one knew what happened to Miss Forrest. She finally came back and looked horrible, like 20 lbs lighter than she already was, greasy hair, bags under her eyes. She looked dead. She started in on our lesson with the overhead projector that she still preferred, and put the pen down and told us her girlfriend lost their child, and that's why she was gone. She told us how she knows everyone made fun of her, about how she's some mean, manly lesbian, but she tried hard to make math enjoyable for us, and she was excited about being a mother and all this really personal stuff. She didn't say it in quotes specifically that stood out, but the whole hour or so of class, she drilled into us that everyone is a person. I saw teachers as a bunch of lame asses sometimes, but you grow up and you see it's just a person trying to help a bunch of kids learn something. But I applied that to everyone. You don't know what people are going through. This crappy feeling resurfaced when Chadwick Boseman passed. Everyone tee-hee-hee at him, looking tired and frail, and then felt bad after knowing he had cancer for like 4 years. Miss Forrest was a good example to just be fucking nice. Lesson 6. Our class was supposed to be reading 1984. One day I showed up to class, and our teacher hit us with a pop quiz on the previous night's reading assignment. I had not done the reading, so I was completely unprepared. I did my best to guess the answers on the first couple of questions, but after that, I knew it would be obvious that I didn't do the assignment, so I started writing my answers as observations about the book. My last answer was along the lines of, "This book is boring," or "This book is weird." When I got my quiz back, he had written, "How would you know you hadn't read it?" I saw that and knew I was going to prove him wrong. That night I sat down and read the whole book with the intent of coming to class the next day and telling him why it was weird and boring. Instead, I liked the book and I came to class and told him what I would have done differently/the same as the main character. He challenged some of my thoughts and I had to do some introspection. I appreciated that he called me out and that he didn't dismiss me when I came back after reading the entire book. From then on, I always made sure I was prepared for assignments. It has paid off in my career when I have been challenged in my work. I have been able to point out why I came to the conclusions that I did and have earned the respect of many people in my company as a result. Lesson 7. I was in math class with a substitute teacher at the start of the school year. The desks were in groups of 4. It was 3 guys and a girl. The 3 of us guys were all telling dead baby jokes, and the girl was getting offended because her little brother was 2 years old. So the girl, being all offended, calls the sub over and says, "They're telling inappropriate jokes about dead babies and they need to stop." The teacher pauses for a second, says, "How many dead babies does it take to paint a barn? Depends on how hard you throw." I saw him 3 years later on campus and he said it is still his favorite memory of substituting. Shout out to you, Mr. White. Lesson 8. I failed math from 3rd grade up until sophomore year of high school. My 3rd grade teacher gave me anxiety relating to asking for help when I was confused in math. I remember feeling really bad this one time about not understanding the material after asking for help from her, but it didn't end well. I refused to ask questions afterwards and would silently struggle and fail. I failed Algebra 1 when I first took it freshman year. The teacher I failed with never made me feel bad for the low grades I brought in when taking tests/completing assignments. I remember her telling me that she could see I was really trying to make progress to learn, and she would have me take it again with another teacher that had a different method of teaching. Sophomore year, I really focused on trying to learn, taking notes, and worked on getting over my anxiety of asking questions. The way my new teacher taught accommodated multiple learning styles. I felt safe to come in after school and spend extra time to make sure I understood. My teacher told me she was very proud of my progress and was a very bright student. That I wasn't stupid. I was really smart, but just wasn't learning in the way that worked for me. I ended up getting my first A a month in when the unit test rolled around. At the end of the year, I was crying when my report card had a B where Algebra 1 was. I haven't failed math since. I ended up testing a few points under level 4 for algebra, and then took a year's worth of geometry in 6 weeks during summer school, getting C's or better. Lesson 9. I was very shy in high school, still am, and had a lot of health stuff going on, mainly in my senior year. A teacher I had in 9th, 11th, and 12th grade will always stick with me. Not only did he have my back during the times I would get the courage to speak in class only to be spoken over, it was a small group and we were all close-knit. He also seemed to know that I was going through something senior year. I mean, I did miss a lot of school, but he never explicitly said anything because I always kept up with my work and was still doing relatively well. So it gets to be the last week of school, and each year he would give each of his seniors a senior song. He claimed he didn't put much thought behind them and would just pick a song that came to him, but I don't know how true that was. It happens to be my turn, and he ends up playing Fight Song by Rachel Platten. I know, kind of cheesy, but at the time the song was newer, and something about it just stuck with me. It's like he was saying that he knew I was going through something, but that I was a fighter. He ended up being my favorite teacher from high school because of the way he supported me and always gave me a chance to speak up. A few years after I graduate, he ends up passing away in a tragic way. I still think about him a lot, especially when I hear Fight Song. It's like he gave me that song to carry with me and remember my strength.